day to you out there. You're welcome to ICT Watch, one of the most informative and authoritative IT show on TV, online, and the magazine itself as well. In a continuation of our usual exclusive interviews, we have with us, joining us today, one of the voices in the industry, in the telecom industry in Nigeria, making reference particularly to the internet service providers in Nigeria. I mean, according to NCC, this company is one of the top 10 companies, ISPs we have in Nigeria. It is humbling enough to have with us today Engr Abiodun Omoniyi, the managing director, the group managing director of VDT Communications. You're welcome, sir. Good to have you here, sir.
Mr. Davis.
Yes, sir. Well, um, let's just hit the ball rolling. Um, we see in our research that Africa seems to have the largest ICT markets as well in every facet of the industry, be it telecoms and what have you. And as one of the top ISPs in Nigeria, we're looking at the business, the industry. Maybe we should start this way. Um,
And the topic you have actually just picked on today is one that naturally will interest me because I'm a player in that sector of the industry or in that sector of the telecom. We hear of the vibrancy, communications industry, telecoms is a lot of money, but like you just rightly pointed out, there are so many people dying. And the ISPs have not fared too well over the years. But from the angle that you came now, talking about a lot of licenses, a lot of interest going into that particular segment of the industry. Well, it shouldn't be far-fetched because, again, when you look at the different service segments that the NCC has, there is the MNOs, there are the maybe there is even another one called private fiber, whatever. Um, there are, so when you now look at it, and you then tend to, just like in every other industry, you have the big players, then you have the middle players, then you have the small players. So, and most industry is just always like a pyramid. You have the very big ones right at the top, and then the middle one are also a bit robust, and then the low one you see multitudes. I would say so. When you look at the at our industry and the segmentation, it looks like that. And I must say the ISP generally, maybe because of the licensing cost attached to it, is it 500,000 naira, and then you get a license for 5 years. So many people rush into it. When people rush into it like that, so can we really say it's an SME business? So of course you have some SMEs, you have some that you can't really classify as SMEs. So when you call us and you say, oh, we are one of the top 10, so definitely maybe we are not SMEs. We definitely are not SMEs, but we play in that market. And then there is also another story about how we VDT actually got into the ISP industry, um, we did not really just apply ab initio when we were being formed to be an ISP, to be ISP. But when we looked at all the things that were put in the ISP, we simply just asked ourselves, why do we need to pay 20 million naira for license when we could as well have paid 500,000 naira and have a 5-year license? And then when you look at the content of things that could be done by the ISP, what we wanted to do that we would have paid 20 million or 30 million at that time is also covered. So, and in fact, we started by actually paying something higher, which a license capacity resale. We started by applying for a capacity resale license, but apparently it's not a well-crafted license and no document was given to us. So after about 5 years, we stayed without documentation. Then when that time actually expired, we simply just went on to applying for an ISP license. So where I'm going is that you see majority of people that just want to belong and want to provide service in one way or the other obtaining an ISP license. So you have them in multitudes, like I mentioned earlier. So, and of course, uh, you are aware of maybe the big four, or will I call them big five? So those ones are there. Then the other ones you probably would want to look at is every other person that you see that provides service, you will want to look at them more like an ISP. If they are not, I mean, like us now, we say okay, we provide LTE service, but the LTE service it touches consumers, so we also still can be grouped into the ISP side of the business. But what is most important in every business is not about uh, just obtaining the license. It's also about, do you really have a well drawn out plan to provide service? So I see that many people just know that I just want a license, maybe for different reasons. Some maybe because there is a new contract coming up. You know how we are in Nigeria, and then I needed to get a license come up, and so they probably may not have the mind of running the business over
Which
time. Um, VDT started operation in 2001. That would be like about 22 years now. So, and we've been on. There is no business anywhere in the world that will not face challenges. But once you are true to your vision, you will still get focused, and of course, those challenges are to be overcome. But I see a lot of people truly that go into the ISP. Some maybe because they don't have a clearly defined focus or vision. Some may have, and it may have been because of the harsh environment. I mean, our environment is challenging, quite challenging, more challenging than most. So, issue of it looks like it seems like the ISP license seems to be the lowest hanging fruit that people could just
easily grab.
have and keep without having any particular vision to give service. So, but again, if you then decide to give service, there are also other obstacles in your way. Um, so, and there are so many obstacles. The operating environment very difficult, because in this industry you need to decide when you, even if you are going to give service, how do you want to give it? Do you want to build your own infrastructure, or are you going to go lease those infrastructures from others. So what is going to be your unique selling point? What advantage do you have that you are actually bringing into the market? So all those, when if for a well laid out plan, you would have actually answered many of these questions. At least you have them on paper
before rolling out.
before you now say you want to go get a license. So now is then that you can then start talking about, I want to roll out my service. Now when you now have when you now have obstacles along the line of your plan, that's when you can be talking about, do I move around the obstacle, do I just scale it, what do I do, do I need more partnership, do I need more capital? So if these are necessary ingredients for any business. But like I said, so I won't be too surprised if there are so many people in ISP, they will fall into one of these three
Categories.
categories that I've actually mentioned. So maybe four. Then there are the successful ones that you probably
No.
are not talking about. Hmm. Okay, so like I said, capital plays a major role in
Okay.
this business,
Okay.
and the ISPs are largely, I would say, they are far smaller than the domineering
Once.
MNOs. Okay, so but what you also find out is that the regulation could actually be better even for the active ones if the regulators actually want them to thrive. There are things that could have been done and that could have been done better than it's been done now.
Don't know.
Okay, so yes, just for the 10 having just 400,000 looks very embarrassing, um, especially given that we have more than 100 million subscribers
In
for the bigger ones. So, and I would say then the regulator needs to do something about it. And there are so many things that can be done. Left to businesses, the best models for businesses, I mean, the advantageous thing for them will be to be a monopoly, to be the only one that thrives. But we all know what advantages and disadvantages are there in a monopolistic market. So this may not be a monopoly. I'm not an economist, but it's a group of very few now that band together. And when they band together like that, then there may not be any reason for them to want the survival of the smaller ones. They want the field just to themselves. So, but this again, when we look at it vis-a-vis to the consumers, it may not really be the best. So clearly the regulator must do something. What can they do?
yeah.
Okay, so part of the things that could be done is a targeted view, just like I talked about a plan.
Yes.
So they need to come out and really understand what are the mitigating factors, what are the things that are obscuring the growth of these ISPs, of these smaller players, which I mean, so I will call the ISP smaller players. So could they have been capital? Could they have been the environmental the operational environment? Could it have been the regulation itself? So, and then do something. If it's regulation, it's within their care. The regulation that probably favors the bigger ones. But I don't really think it's a regulation that favors the other ones. It's more of what we need is more of a regulation that is targeted to promoting the ISPs, those smaller ones, because of the advantages that it will bring. So it could be like, okay, we actually want the smaller ones to have at least 5% of the market share in order to deepen competition. I'm just putting that as an
That's
example.
it.
So if just as we had the national broadband plan, there has to be a plan. There has to be a strategy. So how do we get there? How do we do that? So they need to come up, but I've not seen anything like that. So that means it's a free for all, survival of the fittest. And we know that when you are a small fish, if they say survival of the fittest, then you are likely to be swallowed in no time by a big shark. So, and that is why the regulator is there to make sure that the big shark coexists with the smaller fishes. So, and that needs they need to be intentional to get that done. There has to be some kind of intentional move, and it starts by saying, in market share, we want these smaller players to have this, because then you can then see that they will eventually deepen the competition, because part of what they will be selling, they will be buying from even the bigger ones. Okay, so as they doing that, but because their own market, especially the way we play, their own market is going to be two or three of these bigger ones. So you play, you actually buy from, if you have multiple sources of purchase, then you can negotiate better. You can actually demand better quality, because they also understand the technicalities of how to provide this service, and they also have their own customers, so whom they actually provide service for. So, but a situation where they are not looked out for, then the bigger players can price them out of the market. That may be one of the strategies, not to make them survive, which the regulator needs to actually watch out for. um, these smaller players are playing in the same market. They are selling service to the same consumers that the
Big
bigger
boys.
players are selling service to. And I said the tendency for the bigger players is to be alone. They just want to be a monopoly. They aim, when you are a big fish, you want to be the only fish in the pond. But of course, when you are the only fish in the pond, you also now becomes a target for for the predator, for another bigger predator later. So, but today, as a big fish, so the regulator needs to play the role of an umpire that really wants the smaller ones to go, and that way, then the regulator is going to look at the competitive practice of those bigger ones vis-a-vis making this, not squeezing out the smaller
Smaller
players.
players.
So the current way is being played now is that the bigger ones are actually squeezing out even those active smaller
Smaller
players that you
players.
see. So, and the regulator needs to do something about that fast. Okay. Another thing is, if we are talking of capital, how do we give them a break? We talk about funds. The the regulator declares billions every now and then. In other climes, there are subsidies that are also targeted towards pushing a particular line that I would say the government wants, because regulator is about government. Okay, so if it's advantageous to have these smaller players, then apply some subsidy to their operation. I mean, let them have access. Yeah, it's even in the form of subsidy. The US does it. Elon Musk, as big as it is, there are subsidies. It's being subsidized in his solar panel thing. The Starlink that he's talking about came from the SpaceX. The SpaceX is a big. It was. I mean, at the beginning, it's been highly subsidized to be able to. Then it's from the rocket launching SpaceX that the Starlink actually grew out from. So we cannot have innovation just concentrated at the top. So these smaller players are most likely to actually bring about a lot more innovation, even to the customers, than just a single big player. So those are some of the things that I believe the regulator has a lot to do, which is not being done right now, and it will be to the benefit of the country if they look in that direction and do things. It starts by setting an agenda. We want these people to have maybe 5% of the market instead of what you are saying now is less than 0.5% that we currently hold.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to do finger pointing, right?
Yes, sir.
But what I would just say is that I think it will go a long way if they are able to deal on the ones that are within their pocket. There are some that are within their pocket, which, like I said, let them even first set the policy that they are targeting. And that will also then guide their behaviors. And it will send a note of warning to the people responsible for high bandwidth costs, right? So I also say, like I mentioned earlier, I said uh, poor access to capital.
Yes.
Hmm?
They did mention that, yeah.
Okay, so poor access to capital may not even be the regulator's own, but like I said, there could be incentives.
Yes.
If they've set a target, then they can promote incentives. They can put incentives up because they needed to make sure that happens, and they continue to actually police and check unwholesome practices of the bigger players. Okay, inadequate spectrum, like we know, is a scarce resource, but everybody does not have to own spectrum to survive. Like I said, the smaller players who actually be they can buy into excess capacity of the bigger players, whether in spectrum, when they are, I mean, the rural operation, where they are probably not present, if it's a fertile environment for the ISPs, and they are able to get the right subsidy that is not just targeted to businessmen. This is within their pocket. It's not just about bandwidth. Oh, it's Google that is bringing bandwidth. It's Glo. It's Main One. Is that what they are doing? So, but have they put up the right policy? Let them put up the right policy, and then the other things will then fall in place. Oh, I right of way. Well, right of way. Not that I'm not aware of right of way. Um, but we are more largely into the wireless environment. The wireless environment has to do with spectrum that you talked about, and I've just said spectrum is never really is never going to really be adequate. We need to talk about the efficient utilization of those spectrum, right? Even if we have it, and then you need capital to be able to roll out equipment to use those spectrum. So there is a relationship between the price of spectrum and the cost that you need to actually use in rolling out
Some of this.
services on it. Okay. So the right of way that actually is controlled by state governments
And local governments as well.
and local governments to some extent. Mainly, the local governments are actually some to
The
the
states.
states. So now, I believe these can actually be negotiated. The different ISP operating in different cities have, I mean, they've also been, I mean, yes, it may be a mitigating factor, but I believe that a number of them are able to actually work around this and they are still able to provide service. But not being spectacularly successful is what we are talking about. I mean, there are some ISPs that are doing their
Doing
bits
well.
in giving, and they also they've applied for ROW right of way in some states. So I don't really see that. Yes, I mean, definitely everybody wants things for free. You understand? So most people want things for free, but I think to some extent it's not. I believe it's the regulation more to
That
me
is.
that is actually killing and actually hampering the growth of these ISPs than all these other things that you just talked about. Then you said lack of good corporate governance. Well, I wouldn't know what do they mean. There is a guideline that is set by the NCC. Is it being police? I mean, apart from being police, so there are you can set standards and say these are the standards and then watch over it through reporting. They collect reporting every now and then. So now if you are now saying is a lack of good corporate governance, oh okay, somebody has submitted and it doesn't look too good, then you probably come, maybe you call those people into a lecture room or a talk prep. This is our standard, please comply. We need you to be reporting on this. I believe the ones they call active are rendering their reports regularly. So how else would you then talk about good corporate governance? So how do you know who is actually playing better corporate governance
And the other.
than the other? It's through reporting. If they report and then they also send out inspectors to find out whether those things that have been reported
Are true.
are true. So I'm not saying they are the best, but you remember many of these smaller operators are actually just coming up. They may need some to be babysitted, they may need to
Yes.
be
Pep.
pepped up, they may need, but then they can also become better depending on what the regulator really wants. So lack of good corporate governance, I mean, it's neither here nor there
All of that.
to me. Well, I don't know where you're coming from, but what I've just said is like it's a natural tendency. It's a natural tendency for companies to want to be the only one. You remember MTN was one time declared as dominant.
The dominant.
Why did they do that? What effect did it have on them? Is to slow them down. So this happens. Why? Why didn't they allow them to be so dominant? Even the other bigger ones would have been a lot more repressed if that declaration was not made. So the regulator did something.
Obviously.
They slowed them down. Okay. So now part of regulation is to promote good competition. So I can say anti-competitive, but it's natural when you are dominant to flex muscle, kill that. Don't let him rise up. I need to take his market. So, but it's the regulator that says no, you can't do that because this is the direction we want this to go. We want to promote healthier competition, and how it's not just there are mechanisms for making that to happen. Checking what they sell to the consumer, checking what they sell to those smaller players. If in the same market that the consumer that the smaller player is going to sell, you go to his customer and you say, I will sell to you at half X, and you are selling to the that smaller player who is also an operator, you are selling to that person at X. So that person will not have a market, and the person is going to pay you X, and you've gone to his customer and you offered half X. So that person will continue to lament poor business, bad business. Whereas we are saying, oh, everybody is seeing your own business as being robust. So I think is weak regulation
Mm. Mm.
that fuels anti-competition.
Anti-competition.
Anti-competition. I
Yes.
would like to say I don't believe consumers go out and say I want ISP. The consumers go out and say I want good service at least price. Do you
Anti-competitive
agree?
price. Yes, I do.
At I want the best service at the least price.
Price.
So two extremes. You want the best service at the least price. That's the mind of the consumer that always
Mm.
okay. And it's about what we've been talking
Talking
about.
about it.
Okay.
Obviously.
So um operators, whether big or small, needs to have it in their mind
Mm.
to provide good quality service that is unrivaled in terms of quality. That is one of the first things that attracts consumer to operator, not because you are ISP, they don't even know the difference. They only want service. Is when they now say, oh, I want good service. Oh, it's good, but it's expensive. That turns them off also. Okay. So um, for VDT, what we've done over time in building our process is that we've paid tremendous attention to quality, to making sure we provide quality service. But in truth, sometimes when you say you provide quality service, you also need to make it known. You need to make yourself attractive. You also then need to provide good support. So we are aligned to our international standard organization quality management system, meaning we have processes that gives guarantee that our outcome, our output will be qualitative in the way we produce it, in the way we process it to the customer. So that is one unique selling point. We provide quality service and quality support, and support is so this is part of our processes. Okay. The other thing is that we do it at a competitive price. We may not be able to give consumers the cheapest price. You remember I said they want the best service, the best quality service at the cheapest price. So then we strive to be the best quality service, and then we make sure that yes, we are trying to be cheapest, but it's not possible within the environment. So we have our costs as well. So now, but for the quality, I think we give a an optimal price. We offer an optimal price to customer, which I call, in other words, a competitive price. That looks like the unique selling point that continues to actually stay us on. Again, we don't we play in the different sectors of the consumer, high corporate, mid-tier corporate, SMEs, and retail as a business. So you meet us at the different levels, but we started being in enterprise and high corporates. It's just recently that we veered into SMEs and retail. So, and we brought the same kind of quality that we offer the high corporates and enterprises. We brought it into SME and also into retail, the retail service. So that is what differentiates us from most other ISPs. I just mentioned, I just told you that wishes are never horses. Hmm? So it has to be intentional for the regulator to make that happen. Okay, but we are seeing that it's not happening. The other way would have been for the ISPs to band together and form a pressure group. There used to be such in
The past.
in the past, but there seems to be so much quietness in that arena today. So the smaller players need to actually stand up and go and revive their umbrella association so that they can continue to have voice. So there has to be some intentionality from the smaller players. There has to be some intentionality from the regulator. I actually think so. From this talk, I mean, I also feel fired to want to also ginger the association again. And I think that's what we need to continue to fight for, to punch. Now, this association the umbrella association used to be more vibrant than it is today. Why is it so quiet? In the face of the statistics that you've read out, are we having the right people in there? If we are, why are we not hearing them? Why are we not having hearing the Vanguard Association? And it's those people that can also make the regulator to shift.
Yes. To sit properly.
Okay, so the bigger players, if we hope they will not kill, it's in their nature. I'm not talking about a particular, it's just a natural thing. Think of big businesses. They want to gobble up the smaller ones and want to be the lone one. It's natural. So it's not just in our industry. So now if we have this many
Players.
smaller players, then they need to quickly get together and get their voice heard. And that's the only time our wish, our hope
will be.
can be fulfilled.
I want to thank you so much for having a no holds barred interview. I'm sure it's been a long time since we had this such like this. I want to thank you very much, Sam,
Thank
for
you
having
very
us here.
much, Mr. Adewusi.
Yes,
Thank
yes. And that's how we've seen it today. No holds barred. We've said it as it is, and therefore something, I'm sure, will happen after this. So watch out for this exclusive interview. My name is Tayo Adeus. Bye bye.